B'chvod Rabbi Penner, esteemed Rosh Yeshiva, Rabbanim, faculty, and Talmidim. I'm humbled by the opportunity to speak alongside such distinguished Rosh Yeshiva and Gedolei Torah, whose experience as colleagues or Talmidim of Rav Lichtenstein long preceded my own. However, precisely because my exposure to Rav Lichtenstein came in the latter stage of his life, I'm in a position, in the couple of minutes I have here, to testify in some small measure to the extent to which Rav Lichtenstein realized the vision promised to tzaddikim in the familiar pasuk, Tehillim Odi Nuvun B'Seva, the Shenim V'Aninim Yiyu, they shall yet flourish in old age, vibrant and vigorous they will be, L'Hagid Ki Yashar Hashem Tzriv V'Lo Avasav Bo. Rav Lichtenstein communicated this message to Talmidim first in spellbinding shirim and sichot, the depth and breadth of his erudition, the intensity of his passion, his eloquence and his command of language. All of these were legendary. All of these utilized to convey to us Ki Yashar Hashem Tzriv V'Lo Avasav Bo. But Rav Lichtenstein communicated and transmitted that message, perhaps primarily, as has been noted, through the force and power of his personality, through his personal example, through his own unique qualities and conduct. We learned the primacy of Torah by observing his daily routine as a lomed and melamed. How, for example, shir was never confined to the official schedule. If it were scheduled for the beginning of Seder, that meant it started soon after Shacharis, right in the middle of breakfast. If it were scheduled for the end of the morning Seder, that meant we would be lucky to get lunch before the last morsels of sparim had been devoured. And likewise, he had absolutely no use for the hour break before Mincha, and he could not understand how Talmidim, decades younger than him, claimed to need it to rest. We learned the joy of Torah by witnessing how Rav Lichtenstein danced and sang on Simchas Torah, by hearing his recitation of Birchas Torah, or even by peeking in on him as he graced his makom in the Beis Medrash, learning with evident contentment and serenity on any given day. We learned what Yiras Shamayim consists of by hearing Rav Lichtenstein's searing Kaddish, by watching how he davened in general, but particularly on Yom Kippur, as he stood and swayed in rapt devotion throughout the day. And he did this even in his 70s, after spending the entire night, right up until Shacharis, delivering a marathon shir on Avodas Hayom. We learned what it meant to value Tzelem Elokim and to cherish Kavod Brios by seeing how Rav Lichtenstein spoke and listened to every person, man, woman, or child, Talmud or not, as if he or she were the only thing worth his time at that moment. And that could be for a long moment. I recall how towards the end of my last year in Har Zion, when I told Rav Lichtenstein I would be leaving in a few days, he asked me to meet him in his office, where for the next 2.5 hours, he discussed with me my future plans and concerns and shared with me reflections upon life, Torah, and family. But perhaps above all, we learned humility by watching this towering figure of staggering abilities and accomplishments carry and conduct himself without a shred of pretentiousness. Whether, as was mentioned, it was getting down on his hands and knees to help Bacher find something that he lost on the floor, or waiting quietly on the interminable line in the Chadar Ochel with all and sundry for his portion of potatoes, we were privileged to observe firsthand a quintessential fulfillment of Micha's charge, V'atznei alecha es Hashem Elokecha. Chazal in the Sifrei and the Gemara and Ksuvos state that the mitzvah of Uladavka Bo is achieved through cleaving Talmidei Chachamim. Dveikus b'Talmidei Chachamim is the means, is the method of cultivating Dveikus b'Hakadosh Baruch Hu. I believe this is so in two ways. First, as the Rambam stresses, Dveikus b'Talmidei Chachamim has enormous educational import. Mitzvos aseh lidabek b'Talmidei Chachamim kedei lilmod mimaseihem. Second, however, there's an experiential component. By virtue of his modeling Midos Shel Kadosh Baruch Hu, the Talmid Chacham becomes, in some sense, a vehicle for Hashras HaShechina. And thus, for instance, Chazal say in the Gemara and Brachos, Kol hanenem suda shetalmid chacham sharoi b'socha, kilu nenem miziv hashechina. Anyone privileged to be a Talmid of Rav Lichtenstein can readily attest to the confluence of both of these elements in their exposure to him. By cleaving to Moreinu v'Rabbeinu, we were indeed afforded a measure of the Dveikus b'Hakadosh Baruch Hu atzmo. Ashreinu shezachinu l'chach, and Yhi Zichro Baruch.